But it was not a typical thing for a daughter to say. "I'm going to find my real mom," she said. "She'll let me." In another house, a teen might just be saying, "I hate you." In another generation in the US, as a hippie, she might have taken issue with the establishment. It's a mere device children use, a means to achieve the end. As parents, we're warned not to take such words seriously, but how can we not when our kids can so uncannily cut to the quick of what it is that we care most about? My mother, I should tell you, was not typically swayed by her children's threats. She was, after all, a Swede. She would not take any emotional roller coaster rides, not even when my sister threatened to run away a couple of years later. "Leave your credit card on the counter before you go," Mom said, without turning away from the stove, knowing Amy would return before nightfall. We knew we were loved. We did. Mom made sure my velvet dress was hanging in my closet every Sunday morning, and she'd ladle heaps of ham and scalloped potatoes on my plate for my birthday. And when I was older and needed heaps of other kinds of helpings, she would hug my boyfriend hello when I came home from school, even though I knew she didn't think he was right for me. All that, and yet that night, Amy dared suggest that all the patchwork repairs made for her stuffed Peanuts dog never counted, that she never asked for escargot snuck into the hospital when her tonsils came out. None of what Mom did mattered because of a biological technicality. "But I changed your diapers," Mom said, her voice quavering. She was so quickly unsettled by the words of my sister. "I stayed up when you had the mumps, your cheeks out to here." The fear she must have lived with, to have at the ready this litany of proof of her motherhood for some unnamed person, or worse, for us. Maybe she had practiced at night while sleepless and worried over the impossible possibility, a strange woman at our door looking for something precious she left behind when she didn't know any better, couldn't do anything more. Amy didn't push the issue further, not when Dad reached over with the discipline of his own. I might have not seen anything like it before, but I knew what to do in the face of such raw emotion, such swift justice. Keep my head down, mouth shut, and maybe it would just go away. But this time, even the Swede needed some encouragement, some acknowledgement, someone to tell her that what she'd offered was enough. She said, "I was the one who pulled all that gravel out of your knee when you fell off the bike. I remember, too, Amy on the edge of the sink down in Grandma Vern's bathroom and Mom digging one knit of rock after another, cleansing away the blood, each time to see what else had dug its way into my sister's flesh. You can't go back," Mom said, her tears now undeniable. "I won't go back," I wanted to tell her, "not even when I'm grown and can search without telling." But I dared not speak aloud, not then. I waited until the dishes were cleared and the tears dried. "Oh, Katie," she said when I hugged her. I thought I understood all that was left unsaid, but I was only a child. Mom tried to tell us. Amy wasn't listening, and like so many others who never listened to the prophets, I never thought the words were meant for me. From that moment, it was clear that sides were to be taken in my adoption story. It was also clear that I was not supposed to cross over to explore the other side of the triad. So you can imagine that when Val called me 15 years later, I worried about telling my dad. My mom had only died a few months before. I was worried he'd see it as losing me too. So to tell him that, it's kind of like telling your husband, you just got a call from your ex-spouse, and you're so excited for him to come visit. Is that okay? So I couldn't tell my dad about Val over the phone. I waited to tell him the next time we visited. It was for his birthday, and he was the one who gave me a gift. He said, "You know, Kate," he said, "there's always enough love to go around. But I'm not sharing holidays," he said. "It's hard enough sharing with your husband here." So with that, I felt like I had permission to visit. I was almost 30 years old, and still I felt like I needed to get permission. The feeling of adoptee loyalty is that strong. I worried about telling my sister. I waited until the next time I saw her face-to-face, too. Again, I had no idea how to bring up the subject, and she was the one who brought it up for me. "I heard you talk to your mom," she said. This she said on the 1-year anniversary of our mother's death. I was surprised that of all people, my sister would say it that way. "Your mom," she said. But of all people, it made sense. I shared with her everything that happened because I'd become involved with a group that helped Val find me, I was able to tell her that all she had to do was call them, tell them who she was, that she's my sister, and they'd be ready to help her find her biological parents too. It's been 3 years now, and she has yet to call. Sometimes we're too afraid who will answer on the other side. We're comfortable with the fears we have. We don't want to know what's really around the corner on that other side of the triad. We must remember that in the triad, all sides do touch one another. Val had been brave enough to make that call, and by talking to my dad and my sister, I'd reached a place where I was ready to meet her. So we worked out that she'd drive down for a visit, and I remember seeing her that first time on the stoop, her husband Joe on the sidewalk, and she's supposed to be my height, but she looked really small there and really tired. I wondered how many nights she'd lain awake, wondering what it'd be like when we met. And I swear she did not look anything like me. When I first saw her, I thought, I don't know how she could really be related. And it's one of those things as an adopted child, whenever you cross a busy street and you're looking in people's faces, looking to see, could that be, is that someone who looks like me? You hear she's a twin, you know, could that be related? And it's been almost 20 years now, and I can definitely see the similarities in our faces. But when she was there that first time on that stoop, I brought her into my house, and I remember that first time we hugged, when her arms held me tight, the first time in 30 years that she had held me in her arms when I had not yet been someone else's child. During her visit, we took a lot of long walks, and I told her about life back then, and she asked me about my life now. And it became apparent to me that she wasn't looking to the past, she was looking to the future, and I really wasn't ready for that at all. But that was okay with her. She was willing to take just what I was willing to give. For this, I really credit the post-adoption services of Adoption Network Cleveland. It's a great program when 93 to 98% of birth parents are interested in some sort of contact, according to US statistics. This group then provides counseling for a year before they will provide you any contact information. One way that they find that out is that they have a detective who goes down to the Vital Records office, and they look for the entry for that child who is relinquished or surrendered. In the 1960s, babies born to unwed mothers were all put in the back of the book. When the child was adopted, that number then was blacked out and re-entered in the front of the book along with all the legitimate births. So if you hold the page up to the light just right, you can read through to the numbers and find the match. In that way, the state of Ohio, at least, the detective can find out for the biological mother the new name given to the baby, as well as the name of the adoptive parents and the address at the time of the adoption, and that's how my closed record was opened. Because of Ohio Vital Records, they act primarily as a repository. The only state-sanctioned way an adoption record can be opened is if the adoptee contacts Vital Records and provides permission to be contacted. The other side of the triad has to similarly register permission for the state to connect the two. The process is spectacularly ineffective, and it is used by many states. Studies show that the success rate for this type of process is less than 5%. The Adoption Network Cleveland, on the other hand, worked quite well for Val. They even made sure she knew what to say when making that initial contact with me. They take into account that those seeking contact are emotionally prepared to connect, while those being found might not have worked through all of these emotional considerations. When I first confirmed for Val that I had been born in the hospital on that day, she knew she had found me. There was only one baby girl born there on that date, me. Because of their guidance, she didn't say, "You're mine, you're all mine." Instead, she said, "I have the non-identifying information on the couple who adopted that baby. That baby, not my baby." For someone not expecting reunion, for someone for whom reunion was the last thing on her mind at that moment, such a small detail, such a small word can mean a lot. It can make the difference for me. Funny how such a little word can be so loaded, but everything is loaded in a newly reconnected relationship. It was for me. My first birthday after Val found me, by all rights, should have been the first time she was able to celebrate my birthday, a birthday she'd kept in secret for almost 3 decades. But instead, I had the gall to ask her, not to send me a birthday card. I know, I'm terrible. It's really horrible. I can't believe I actually told her that, but it would have been the first birthday after my mom died. And it would have been really weird to get a card from her and not from my dad. Mom had always been his organizer, and there was no way he'd have it together enough to be able to send me anything. I was really struggling with the adoptee loyalty issues. I knew that the sides of the adoption triad were changing, and I was doing everything I could not to allow any more of those changes. And Val was patient with that. We'd go through 6 months without a call, and when she'd call, and back then she was always the one to call, we'd have a really nice conversation. I just wasn't feeling the need to connect, not yet. When my girls started experiencing milestones, our family would gather for a celebration, and my husband's sisters started asking about my mom. It was really strange. They knew my mom was dead, and I knew who they were talking about. Where was she, they wanted to know. Why isn't she here? I hadn't even thought to ask Val. I was embarrassed telling her afterwards about the first communion and the birthday party that followed. Fortunately, though, I had another daughter and could invite Val for that next round of celebrations. And every time she was asked, she would come visit. She drove 13 hours to sit next to me in the back of an auditorium to watch